Greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We'd like to welcome everybody that's in the house, those in the parking lot, 99.1, or those that may be watching live stream. Those of you that are fathers, happy Father's Day. Our lesson today is the guidance for work and rest. You know, the Bible teaches work, it also teaches rest. I know the hardest job I ever did in my life was being a father. You know, the way I remembered, a spat on the bud and the thread of another one was enough to make me mind. Seemed like it don't anymore. But the lesson here, it says, God has ordained the natural rhythm of work and rest. Work gives purpose to life and improves one's self-esteem. For the believer, work gives the satisfaction of participating with God in fulfillment, His purpose of creation, since meaningful work is a part of God's paradise plan for humanity from the beginning. You find that in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, the 8th verse to the 15th. God was the one that ordained work. He also commanded us to rest. 6 days God created the worlds. It was an example for us. On the 7th day He rested. Did God need to rest because He was so exhausted? It was horrible making man, everything that went into him. Looked over at Jesus and said, I'm exhausted. I got to rest. No, He rested as an example for us, that we should enter into His rest. Studies have showed people that does meaningful work, people that enjoys the work, they're happier. It gives them health. It gives them satisfaction. When you do a good job and you look back at it, don't you look back at it with pride? I did that. Look at my garden. It's clean. You know, I love putting out a garden, and then the weeds and the bugs take it over, and then I'm disappointed. Gallup poll says 52% of Americans work more than 40 hours a week. I was a little surprised on that. 39% work more than 50 hours a week, and 18% say their work something like 60 hours a week. I know at Oakwood I've worked so much overtime. My wife was at home homeschooling the kids, so I had to work long hours to support the family. And I worked so much over on first shift, some people thought I was working first shift. And Nathaniel was working at the Kroger Marketplace, started out as a bagger, worked his way up to assistant manager in 6 years. And one of his employees said, my dad, I used to work at Oakwood. He goes, well, do you know my dad? He used to work at Oakwood. I said, Norman Dalton. And he looked at Nathaniel and says, so that's why you work so many long hours. I guess he saw me working it, and he learned from it. I didn't think he was watching, but I guess he was. And the lesson says, and therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus, and sought to slay him because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered them, my Father worketh hitherto, and I work. God works, Jesus works, and some people think the world owed them a living. They don't have to work. Now, to understand this verse that I just read, you must remember at the pool of Bethesda, there was a man that was lame for 38 years laying there. He couldn't get into the water when the angel stirred the water, and the first one in would be healed. And Jesus says, do you want to be healed? And God healed him. And he told him to take up his bed and walk. And he took up his bed and he was walking with it. And people was looking at him, what are you doing carrying your bed on the Sabbath day? That's work. You know, sometimes we strain at a gnat, swallow a camel, as the Bible says. Make your punches count. When I was in the military, some commanders or the captain of the ship was a haircut. Everybody had to have a haircut. When I went into the military, it was long hair for boys. Everybody had hair over the ears and down on their neck. Everybody but me, and I was a strange guy in the crowd. So when I went in the military, it wasn't that much of a change for me. But for them, it was. Haircut's the thing. Some hits the uniform, making sure you got a clean uniform and proper uniform. And so the Pharisees and Sadducees, it was the Lord's day. They made up rules that wasn't even in the Bible. And they was condemning him. If you heard Andrew Thomason preach about the man at the pool of Bethesda, didn't he do a wonderful job explaining how that God had healed him and he was taking his bed? 38 years this man was sick. Many of them probably knew him. Instead of saying, thank God he healed him, they criticized him because he healed him on the Sabbath. In the 9:4 it says, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. He said, I must work because it's daytime. You ever heard the phrase, you burn in daylight? You got to get to work, do the job. Because after you're dead and gone, you can't work. In the 17:4 it says, I have glorified thee on the earth. I have finished the work which thou givest me to do. Now, Jesus said, I've done the work that the Father sent me to do. Can you say, I have done the work that God has given me to do? In the sixth chapter, in the 26th verses, Jesus answered them and said, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, ye seek me, not because you saw the miracles, but because you did eat the loaves and were filled. Now this is where Jesus fed the 5,000 people. He took the little boy's fish and he took his loaves and he multiplied and he fed the people. And they were following Jesus, not because of his doctrine, not because of what he was preaching, but because they were filled. You ever heard the phrase, way to a man's heart's through his belly? And I guess it was for them. Some people think the world owes them a living. God commands us to work, not to be taken care of by other people. Labor not, 27th verse, says, labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life. Don't seek after the meat that's going to be perished, but for everlasting life. You got to look ahead into the future. which the Son of Man shall give unto you, for him hath God the Father sealed. We're sealed if we're Christians to go to heaven, to do God's will. I used to drive for Artec, and we haul low-income people. We haul people that was in wheelchairs, people with dialysis. And I was amazed watching at people, those that worked hard, made a living, wasn't able to take care of themselves. Maybe they were in a wheelchair and we had to take them to the doctor. They were extremely grateful. Then I picked up others that they thought the world owed them a living. And it was quite a difference between the two parallels. The Bible tells us to work with our hands, as we will study later. Now we go to Mark, the 6th chapter and 30th verse, talking about us finding rest in God. What I just went over is how we glorify God in work. And it says, and the apostles gathered themselves together unto Jesus, and told him all things, both which they had done and what they had taught. And he said unto them, Come ye yourselves apart to a desert place, and rest a while, for there were many coming and going, and they had not leisure so much as to eat. Now, God commands us to work, but it also commands us to take care of our body. He commands us to rest. In Matthew 11:28 says, Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Ever heard of D.L. Moody? He was a minister that during the 1800s. He was a shoe salesman. And whatever D.L. Moody did, he was 110%. When it's a shoe salesman, he sold more shoes than anybody. And when things got slow in the store, he would go out into the street and stop people on the sidewalk and try to get them to come to the store to see his shoe. Look at this shoe. See the shoe, the quality that goes into this? This was back in the 1800s when people had to make shoes by hand, not automation. Look at the quality of this shoe. This is a great shoe for the price. Come in the store and I'll show you some more shoes. And he got a lot of people come into the store that sell the shoes. When God saved him, he took the same enthusiasm to God and God's work. I never heard of it in my life, but there was a church that wanted him to buy a pew. So he bought a pew. Well, if I had to buy a pew, I might as well fill the pew. He went into the streets and got the low-income people, the immigrants, people that other people didn't want, filled the pew up. Then he bought another pew, filled it up. Then he bought a third one, filled it up. Whatever he did it 110%. And when he got in his 50s, the doctor told him, D.L. Moody, you can't keep doing this. Your heart ain't going to take it. You're going to kill yourself. He's preaching 5 and 6 sermons on Sunday, plus all the work he did through the week. And he died at the ripe age of 62. You know, when you consider 62 young, you're getting old. Wouldn't it be better if D.L. Moody had cut back to maybe 2 sermons on Sunday instead of 5 and 6? Cut his workload back, but he kept on, and it killed him. There's a great Church of God minister called Robert Brock. I remember him preaching camp meeting at Lexington. And you could tell he was exhausted when he was preaching. He was working 18, 22 hours a day. In order to do that, he had to take pills to keep that schedule up. And there was people warned him through the Spirit, Brother Brock, you can't keep doing this. You're going to destroy yourself. And he was doing good work, all kinds of programs, built a mega church. I think it was in Mississippi. His brother had a church in Ohio, Steve Brock, and he followed him where he went on somewhere else. He broke all of his records, the church records, but he kept on till he destroyed himself. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you're supposed to put in 18, 22 hours a day. You know, God designed us to rest. And did they enter into his rest? No. This was after John the Baptist was beheaded. And they were still probably grieving over them. I know Jesus did. And they didn't even have time to eat. And he told them to go into this desert place and rest. Restore their soul, and then they would go back and work. Benjamin Franklin had a lot of great sayings. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. A penny saved is a penny earned. He said something else I never heard of. He that can take rest is greater than he that can take cities. He that can take rest is greater than he that takes cities. We got to rest. The people who disobey the Lord's Day the most are ministers. It'd be wonderful if every minister could take Monday off and probably leave the town or turn their phone off anyway, or they're going to be most of my dad's ministry, if you call our house, it was long distance, so they didn't call as much, but I heard the parsonage phone rings constantly. There's a story here about two wood lumberjacks, I guess it was. They were seeing who could cut the most wood. And one guy rested quite a bit, and he cut more wood than the one that was worked the most. And asked him, how did you do it? And he says, while I was resting, I was sharpening my axe. You know, work smart, you know. And Paul, here he's talking about Christians working. Acts 20:33, I have coveted no man's silver or gold or pearl, yet ye yourselves know that these hands have ministered unto my necessities and to them that were with me. Now, Paul, one place, talked about he had the right to ask them to take care of him. My dad, when he pastored the Monticello Church of God, at best he broke even. It was 35 miles to church. He wore out a vehicle going down there pastoring. The money he gave to the church what little portion was taken out that went into a retirement for him, at best he broke even. He had to work to the church couldn't support him. There wasn't enough people, enough tithe payers. I have showed you all things, the 35th verse, how that so laboring ye ought to support the weak, and to remember the words of the Lord, how he said, it is blessed to give than to receive. Some people's attitude, or the world's attitude, maybe I should say, is get all you can all you get, and sit on the lid. Now, why does it say it's better to give than to receive? There is a blessing in giving. Have you ever give to somebody or helped somebody? It gives you a good feeling inside. And that's the way God intended. Not so much as a handout as a hand up, helping them. In 1 Thessalonians 2:9, for you remember, brethren, our labor and travail, for laboring night and day, because we ought not to be chargeable unto any of you. We preached unto you the gospel of God. They should have supported Paul more than what they did. The tribe of Levi was supported by the tithes of the church in the Old Testament. These are the people who took care of the temple, the priesthood. And many times the people wouldn't give to God like they're supposed to. And many of the priests had to go out into the fields and work. That wasn't God's plan. God's plan was for the church to take care of them. I don't believe it, but one minister said, if everybody who calls themselves Christians give 10% of their income to God, we could save Kentucky the first year. The next year we could save the United States. And next year we could save the world. And Paul didn't burden the people. He worked. Paul was a tent maker. One place where he went, there was a couple that was tent makers, and they made tents. And he made tents with them to help support his ministry, to help support the work of God. Now it says to use your hands for good. Ephesians 4:28. Let him that steals steal no more, but rather let him labor working with his hands the thing which is good, that ye may have to give to him that needeth. Let him that steals steal no more. We are to labor with our hands. Paul seemed fond of the phrase, work with your hands. The Bible mentioned working with your hands no less than 100 times. It's always talking about working with your hands. This is when people didn't make their living from the shoulders up, like many people do today behind a computer, management. But they labored with their hands. And God commands us to labor with our hands. Did you know God commanded you to work? It's usually not mentioned in ministry. But God commands us to. Now he's writing to the Ephesians here. And it says, much like many major cities today, Ephesus was a metropolis where thieves, gamblers, and swindles were common. Many earned their livelihood through theft organized crime. Paul's language indicates some of the readers had been saved out of such behavior, so he points them towards the divine dignity of honest employment. There's a woman in Macquarie County, had 22, 24 children. She had 2 sets of twins. Every one of them was paid for by the federal government. Now her children are having children living off the government. That is not God's way. I'm not saying this to be political, but entitlements is going to kill America. Some people say, I deserve my Social Security. I paid in for it all my life. If you've been drawing Social Security 7 years, statistically speaking, you draw it out every penny you paid in. Social Security worked good when there was 16 people working to every one drawing. And you start drawing Social Security at 65 and you died at 68 or 9. But the oldest group of people in America are people living over 100. I'm only saying this to warn you. Hard times are coming. The system we got cannot last. Did you know there was 4 Civil War widows died after the year 2000? Civil War ended what? 1867, 68, 69, somewhere along there. One woman, she helped take care of a Missouri infantryman, helped do his labors and stuff. Her parents let him do it. He wanted to take care of her, so he married her. He was 93. She was, I think, something like 17. She never did get to draw his pension because her daughter-in-law said, if you sign up for the pension, I will ruin your reputation. And she felt that her reputation was worth more than the pension. So she didn't draw it. But there was probably 3 widows that was drawing a pension after the year 2000. See how entitlements is killing us? And Medicare and Medicaid is worse shape than Social Security is. We're going to end up having to be like Elijah and a widow woman. We're going to have to pray that God keeps filling the barrel as we make a next loaf of bread. Hard times are coming. I remember seeing a plaque at the Somerset Vocational School. Paul Harvey said, if every communist was to die, this was back during the Cold War, if every communist was to die, America would still have 90% of its problems. Because our problem is lazy Americans, not willing to work. Think the world owes them a living. And God commands us to work with their hands to be able to give to the poor. Dave Ramsey, which is a whole lot smarter than I am when it comes to finances, he said, live like nobody else does. Tithe, save your money, work hard, accumulate house and home. And then you can enjoy some of it on vacations. And you can also give to the poor, give to other people. Says, when we leave this world, will you be known as one that accumulates treasures on earth that you cannot keep? You ever see a hearse behind a U-Haul behind a hearse? You're not going to take it with you. Or will you be recognized as one that invested treasures in heaven that you cannot lose? And next we go to work to please God. Colossians 3:22 says, servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service or man pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. Did you know God commands us to work for our employer like we work for God? We have to work. And during the slavery in America, people loved to emphasize those verses for their slaves. The Bible doesn't promote slavery or it don't condemn it. And I hate slavery. In the Bible, if you were sold into slavery, you worked 7 years. Then you was free. And there was a man who saw these people in prison in England. You didn't pay your debt, they put you in prison. Well, if you're in prison, you can't work to pay your debt. So he had the idea of bringing them to America, mostly in the state of Georgia. And they worked 7 years, and whatever they made went to pay on their debt. After 7 years, they were free. He used the Bible as an example. But there was never to enslave a person. They were in prison because of their debts. They were free now. They wouldn't to indebt somebody else. What was Georgia during the Civil War? Was it a free state or was it a slave state? People forgot, didn't they? In the 23rd verse, and whatsoever ye do, do it heartily as to the Lord. Did you get that? Whatever you do heartily as to the Lord. When you work, do you work like you're working for the Lord? And not unto man. In the 24th verse, knowing that the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. Now he talking about it's pleasing to God to work. Now think about it, people. If you have an employer and you complain about him all the time, you complain about the job all the time, you complain about how hard you have to work, are you letting your light shine to him as a Christian? Make your punches count. You ever heard that phrase? It has to do with boxing, you know. Make sure, don't go into it just swinging. Make sure your punch counts. And if you're complaining about everything and you come to them with a complaint or her with a complaint, are they going to take you seriously? Here he comes again, complaining again. He's always complaining. But if you never complain and then you come to him with a problem, maybe there's something to it, because Norman never complains. Maybe I ought to look at this rather than complaining all the time. You know how a lot of churches, after they have church, they go out to the restaurant to eat? I've heard some of the worst customers is Sunday on after church. I've heard the least tippers are the ones from church. That shouldn't be. If you are an employer, you deserve to give your people honest day's pay for honest day's work. If you're the employee, you need to give your boss an honest day's work for the honest day's pay. This is all biblical. Now it's talking about the Christian work ethic. It says, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of heart unto Christ. Not with eye service as man pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God for the heart. With all ye, with good, well-doing service as to the Lord and not to man. It commands us to work as if we're working to God, not to man. I'll be honest, there's horrible business people. There's horrible employers. And sometimes you have to look at it as you're working for God, not for him. Knowing that whatsoever good things any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether it be bond or free. And ye masters, do the same things to them, forbearing the threatening, knowing that your masters also is in heaven, whether there is respect of persons with him. Charles Spurgeon, who is a great minister, said, grace makes us the servants of God, while still we are the servants of man. Remember, we're God's servant, but we're also working for man. It enables us to do the business of heaven while we are tending to the business of earth. It satisfies the common duties of life by showing us how to perform them in the light of heaven. Remember, you're God's servant. Now, 2 Thessalonians, the 3rd chapter, 10th verse, it says, for when we were with you, this is commanded you that any would not work, neither let him eat. For we hear that there are some who walketh around with disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies. And when now them that are such as commanded and exhort by the law, by the Lord Jesus Christ, that with quietness ye work and eat their own bread. But ye, brethren, be not weary in well-doing. Communists first started in America, okay? And it was in Jamestown, Kentucky. The settlements come over, and everybody worked. Everybody benefited from the work. They all got the same, you know. So absentees got so bad that people wasn't working. Why should I work? I'm going to get the same as I work. That's why communism don't work. And finally, they took the food, put it in the building, put a padlock on it, and that's where we get the phrase, don't work, don't eat. And he give people portions of land. And you work that portion of land. and people had to show up to work on their property. It wasn't that they all benefited from the same work. And it's God's plan. If you don't have a student guidebook, I think there's a few left. See Lisa Tilley and get one. Thank you for your time, and happy Father's Day.